Hey, welcome to this week's podcast. It's great to have you listening in again. This week I'm joined by Belinda Smith from The Root Cause, who we've had on the podcast before. Belle and I definitely share a lot of common interests in supporting kids' health. And today we're going to talk about the health star rating system. And this is really an important conversation right now because the Australian government is about to mandate a health star rating system so that processed foods need to have a health star rating on their packaging. But Belle and I both share some real concerns about this system, which appears to be quite flawed. So let's just start about talking about kids' health in general, Belle. Like, why you're particularly so passionate about kids' health. I know there's some really alarming statistics that you have around kids' health. So, and this is the reason why understanding this very flawed star rating system is so important because it does impact on kids' health.
Oh, 100%. I want to say thank you for the opportunity to share. I'm always just wanting, it's about raising awareness.
Yes,
Without awareness, we don't have the information to take action.
exactly.
So I would love for everyone that's listening today to think about this in the context of your own family, but
Yep.
also whatever we're doing with our own families becomes generational. And I honestly believe that our kids' health and what we do in our own homes is our legacy. Like, no one loves our kids any more than we do. And if we can't stand for them in our own homes, and that means extending out to questioning things in schools, etc., then what hope have our kids got? So, in talking about that, let me just share some of the statistics around kids' health. So, the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare report, which was last completed, a survey completed in 2022, so it's currently 3 years old, showed that there was 45%, so nearly half of our kids, 45% of our kids living with some form of chronic health condition. So that's a condition that will either be lifelong or it has some kind of impairment on their ability to participate in day-to-day life.
It's crazy.
Like, yeah. And so I encourage everyone to think back to your days when you're at school.
Yeah.
Like, how many kids legitimately were deemed to be, chronic
You.
conditions? So that's just one stat. Now, I've been doing this work for 13 years, and you and I have had this conversation, Georgia, about the fact that the stats are just going backwards,
They are.
and it's heart-wrenching to see that. We'll come to the health star rating system, but we've got public health doesn't seem to be supporting what's needed. Like, our stats keep going back. So, I mean, that's one of them. And then we've got 1 in 5. I've just pulled off the latest today. 1 in 5 primary school students suffering high levels of anxiety,
Mm.
and that in itself is, not great. We've got 14% of kids that are between 4 and 17 have met the diagnostic condition to be deemed to have anxiety and depression. So, like, we're heading down that path now where the symptoms for our kids in schools of anxiety and depression are actually increasing. ADHD, I mean, we've got 8.2% of kids between 4 and 11 have been, diagnosed with ADHD. And what they're actually finding is that when they look at the PBS, like, the trend is that medications are actually increasing. And in fact, there was recent articles in the last couple of months about how we've got a shortage of medication now in the country for children on ADHD. So people might be thinking, where does food come into this? Well,
Mm.
if you're listening to this podcast, then there's a very strong
Yeah.
correlation.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to pull up a quick study. I had it here before coming on, but there's an umbrella study that from the British Medical Journal that looked at over 10 million people.
Yep.
And what it actually found was that greater UPF, so ultra processed food consumption, and we'll come back to that in a minute,
Yep.
is consistently linked with higher risk of 32 adverse health outcomes.
Yep.
And it said that they're associated with a 25% risk of ADHD symptoms. So there's such a strong connection between, and I mean, I remember when I started this work, 13 years ago, I was like deemed to be a nut job, like
Could
really.
be both.
Yeah. And well, yeah, exactly. And now I look at it and I think the science is finally there, but no one was listening to what parents were saying,
No.
but this science is now really, really clear. And that's just one of the
Yeah.
stats.
And even if we just strip it back to what we know as parents, and any parent that's listening, I'm sure, would have observed what happens when their kids eat ultra processed food, particularly, if they're given a random lollipop that's got a million different colors, or they go to a birthday party, how it impacts their behavior, their sleep, their concentration, their focus. And I know in the case of my own children, we always used to have this kind of standard. My kids have had exceptional health most of their lives, but always after Easter, in the weeks following Easter, they would both get sick with a cold or, some kind of bug. Always. And it was always after Easter. It was always after the school fair, the times where I really loosened the reins and actually kind of said to them, you go for it. There was a whole heap of foods that they were eating that they wouldn't normally be eating. It was like clockwork. It really was. So, even without the studies, I'm sure, as I said, we've all witnessed the effect that ultra processed food can have on our kids.
I mean, it's interesting that you talk about that, because I've had people say to me, "Oh, that's because your kids don't eat enough of it, and that's why they get affected." I'm like, why would I?
You know what the problem is when children are eating that food all of the time, the lines are the boundaries are blurred.
Yeah,
So, you can't clearly distinguish that this is because of this food being
yeah,
eaten.
yeah,
So
exactly.
really that would be my response.
Yeah.
It's just that it's not as clear because, it's not clear to you because you don't have the same baseline, I suppose, that a kid or a family that's not eating ultra processed food.
Well,
So
let me share with you some stories of why we do need to be worried about this in
yes,
schools. I mean,
epic.
because there's such a hidden cost to schools. I have this conversation with school leaders all the time that, you know, now you go into an admin office at a school, and if it's like before recess, the office will be full of kids lining up to get their medication.
Mm,
One of the schools that we worked with in Queensland were so concerned about the number of kids that were filing into their admin office to be given medication that they actually cut a hole in the office building wall and put a new window in so that the kids would line up in a single file line to come up and get their medication. Now, again, think back to that at school for
in
you.
our days.
Like, never existed.
No.
So now our schools are giving out medication. They've all got the EpiPen kind of thing happening. There's this constant stream of needing to support children. And if we just actually had more conversations and focused on how can nutrition support them. I mean, I often say, like, let's just keep it simple. Let's just use the word food.
Yes.
Food can have a big impact. And we know from the data that we've been collecting since 2019 of over 25,000 lunchboxes across the country. Each lunchbox has, on average, 2.2 ultra processed packaged foods.
Mm.
And there was a study that come out of over 300,000 people where it identified that if you consume ultra processed foods more than a few times a day, you're four times more likely to suffer mental health issues. And what's the rising rate of mental health issues in our children?
Yeah.
So this is why we really need to be having some pretty serious conversations,
Yes.
because it's let's dive into the health star rating
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
why we're
Yeah.
here. I mean,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Because I mean, it is really concerning to think that these guidelines, just how much they're going to negatively impact on this generation, if we keep giving foods that are clearly not serving the health of anyone, not just children, but anyone, a high health star rating, or
mm,
the gold star health rating, when yeah, it's just so misguided. There's just so many flaws in this system. So
yeah, I mean, I remember giving evidence to a parliamentary committee in 2018,
yes,
and I put forward in 2018 we need to start considering additives and preservatives, and I held up pictures of lunchboxes so the senators could see what kids were eating, and uh, at that stage they were still talking about putting a sugar tax on, and so there has been some reform. Like the health star rating was introduced in 2013, and then it had a review in, I think it was 2018,
yeah,
and they've just had another review, and this latest review is the one that they're now proposing that they'll make it better by mandating it that everyone has to be using the health star rating by 2027. There has still not been any mention to include additives and preservatives or the level of processing in foods. And yet the science is actually saying that this is what the problem is now.
yes,
We've gone past the days of fat and sugar and
yes,
sodium, which
yeah,
is what the health star ratings build off.
yeah,
So I like to use the analogy of, we don't allow cars to be let out of a factory knowing the airbag's faulty.
yes,
And yet here we are, we have a problem, a public health problem for our children, and we want to let the car of the health star rating system that doesn't include the latest science out on the road
yeah.
for more
Great
people to
analogy.
like. So I think that um, there's a place for a rating system. There's not everyone's like you and I, and probably the people listening, who
Yes,
have long turned over the packets and looked at what's in our
yeah,
food. So there's definitely a place for something like that. But what we're calling upon with our petition is to actually say, fix it up
yes,
before you roll it out.
yeah.
Because we really wouldn't let a car drive out with a broken airbag.
No, exactly. So,
Mm.
just so I'm clear, the food that this health food rating is based on the macros of fat, sugar, like fat being
Yeah.
bad,
So the four
sugar,
components that actually get factored into the algorithm
yeah,
are energy in terms of kilojoules,
right,
saturated fat, total sugars, and sodium.
yeah,
When it did its first review, they changed more recognition for sugar and sodium
okay,
because they weren't factored in very well.
yeah,
And so subsequently, now you've got manufacturers being a little bit smart with how they're declaring sugars and things in the ingredients. And,
mm,
that's why now you see sugars spread across, 4 or 5 different versions of sugars in the one
yes,
product.
it's not just sugar
No,
on
and
the label, anyway.
no. So the algorithm itself is just factored on those 4 components, and then it adds in, I guess, bonus points based on fiber and protein and things like that. So now everyone's probably seen the latest flavor of the month has been between fiber and protein. So
Yeah,
now you're starting to see more products popping up on the shelf saying high in protein, high in fiber,
yes, yes,
and but I guess the real part of this is at what point does the latest science that's showing the level of processing
yes,
and things like emulsifiers, which are, being shown to be impacting gut health, which then impacts mental health. At what point do we factor those things in?
Yes.
And the big challenge is our health star rating system was built off the back of having industry involved.
Yeah.
So we've got a public health crisis that's been driven by food,
Yeah.
where the food industry has had a role to play.
Yeah.
So we need to look at how do we, this is what we're asking for, how do we remove them out and have an independent review that factors in this latest science around the level of processing in food.
Yeah,
That's what we're calling
that's
for.
not considered, is it? It doesn't
No.
matter if something. I know that coconut oil is always it's got like the lowest of lowest, like the poorest
Yeah.
food rating because it's high in fat and because
Yeah.
that's big alarm bells. But there's, like you said, there's nothing factoring in. I know for a long time now, one of the first blogs I actually wrote on Well Nourished like 14 odd years ago was about Up and Go, because it's just been one of my absolute pet peeves for a long, 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 long time.
Mm.
And I thought I would actually quickly, just in case anyone still actually thinks that Up and Go is a food that is worth, is worth consuming. I just wanted to read out the ingredients, and of course now I've put them on my phone, and my phone's moved away from that screen. Oh my goodness me. Let me see. Sorry, guys.
And while you're looking that up, I have to say, Up and Go is one of the examples that we use when we're at schools
Yeah,
teaching kids about how to ask what's in my food, because they're big in lunch boxes.
huge. Yeah,
And
absolutely. And I see them all the time. Like, my son's playing AFL at a really high level, and it's not uncommon for the boys when they finished a game to have Up and Go. And I know in traditional, even dietetics, they're told to refuel with that. Like they're
mm,
actually instructed by dietitians to refuel with Up and Go. So
yeah,
just in case you haven't looked at the label, if it for anyone that's listening, so the ingredients is water, skim milk powder, then it's maltodextrin, which is a form of very highly processed carbohydrate or sugar. Then there's cane sugar. Then there's plant fiber, soy protein, loads of different vegetable oils, fructose, so more sugar. The only probably really kind of recognizable ingredients are oat flour and cocoa. And then we go into flavors, acidity regulators, vegetable gums, and stabilizers. And, there's 4 teaspoons of sugar in one Up and Go. Um, so you can see that sugar is listed in its various different forms. Anyone who has listened to anything that I've said understands my views on the dangers of consuming refined vegetable oils, which basically this is a combination. This product is just basically a mix of milk, sugar, and vegetable oil. There's really, I mean, they add in vitamins and minerals because, again, that's good for marketing.
yeah,
It makes it appear like it's a healthy choice to most, people who don't really understand. On face value, when you look at the front of the packaging of Up and Go, it appears to be quite a healthy product. But like, I know you always recommend flip the
yeah,
box, flip the packaging. This whole, health washing, I call it, where the front of the packet makes all of these bold claims, like you said, usually around protein and fiber, but when you look at the ingredients, really, it is just a whole heap of heavily processed ingredients, none of which our body is designed to recognize. It's not nutritionally balanced in the least, yet it has a 4.5-star health rating. It's 4.5 out of 5. So
mm.
it's almost as good as it gets, basically.
One of the arguments of why they want to mandate the health star rating system is because it's actually built on comparing the products and in the like category. So they're saying by having more companies on board, then it's more likely to be realistic. But the reality is the formula that's giving that star rating is fundamentally flawed. And,
Yes.
I just because, AI is the latest flavor of the month for people to search on stuff. I went into AI this morning, said, can you give me some, healthy, health star rated products? And one of them come up with Wheat Bix. What was it? Wheat Bix multigrain.
Yep.
And so I thought, you know what, Wheat Bix, let's just take a look at what this was. And I've just got it on my other screen, so excuse me for looking
No,
across
no,
here.
you're right.
And so the ingredients are whole grain cereals, 73%, which is good. It's a mix of wheat, rye, sorghum, oats, rice, puff wheat. Then
Yep.
comes in sugar, then coconut, barley malt extract, salt, vegetable oils, honey, rice syrup, emulsifier, vitamins, and the list of vitamins that are there. So that's a 4.5 star health rating.
Mm.
And when you look at 2 biscuits, it's got 4.3 grams of sugar, so 1 teaspoon of sugar.
Yep.
Now, how many people do you know would have 2 Wheat Bix with milk and not add anything else, like any extra sugar on the top, because they taste like cardboard,
Yes.
right? So, it's a real interesting thing, because the very thing that it's supposed to be doing is getting people to go, oh, that's like one of the better choices, and
Yes.
perhaps it actually is.
Yep.
But is it what we really want to be encouraging parents to be sending their kids to school on a stomach of,
Yeah. Wheat
ultra
Bix.
processed
Yeah,
breakfast before
exactly.
school?
And
So
not to mention that the grains are extruded, so they're exposed to like massively high heats, which denatures all of the proteins and fats, and then
yeah,
that in itself is another whole topic on on how it's that they're not actually whole grains in that
no,
they're heavily ultra processed whole grains, but they're still ultra processed. So yeah.
yeah. And then when you look at the vitamins, I think there's a lot of research that actually supports that it's the combination of the food matrix of how it's all joined together
Yes.
that makes those individual vitamins
Yeah.
work in our body. But when we start to like pull the matrix apart and say, oh, we're going to add this little bit of vitamin B here and this little bit over here of folate, and we've actually denatured the matrix of how it was all built. So
Yes.
it's questionable about whether those little things are actually adding as much value as clearly the marketing's
Yeah.
telling us.
And even, I mean, I would question that mass supplementation is never a good idea. It's not going to end well, because we're not designed like we're all designed as very unique individuals. So that kind of
Yeah.
mass supplementation and just throwing supplements at someone, it's dangerous. It really is dangerous. So yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? That like we've discussed before, we know that the food manufacturers, they actually design foods to now fit within this rating system,
Yeah.
but with no mind for health. There's no mind for health when any of these products, even the products that they, that are found in the health food aisle, often it's not about health. It's about the bottom dollar for
Oh, of
the
course.
vast majority of them.
Yeah. And the thing that we've really got to be extremely conscious of too is, places like Sanitarium, like they now fund Life Education Australia, who go into schools and they teach our kids. So we've got to be really conscious of all of the pieces of the puzzle.
Yes.
We give it this star rating and then the schools go, oh, it must be good. But then, like you have companies that are backing those things going into schools, like where do we draw the line about being independent about the quality of the information? So
Yes.
I think for the health star rating system definitely serves a purpose and
Yes.
could be really great, but it needs to factor in what the latest science is built off. And the problem that we've got is it is built off the Australian Dietary Guidelines, which were developed in 2013, currently under review.
Mm-hmm.
I've sat in on a couple of meetings around that. Put forward is ultra processed foods being, or the level of processing being considered.
Mm.
Um, and they said that they're waiting to see the latest research. So I'm hopeful that they may be factored in, but they're not going to be ready until the end of 2026.
Oh,
So we're, the whole, let's start the mandate before the guidelines are updated, for me just is that gap of, well, we're rolling out something that isn't already functioning the way it should.
yes.
Is it actually going to improve health? I mean, there's currently, if you look at the review that has been done of the health star rating system, they don't actually know if it's correlating to people making better purchases.
Right.
So that's concerning in itself.
Mm.
So uh, I think the best advice that we can give people, and the people listening to this probably already are, is just ask what's in my food, turn the packet around and look at those ingredients. And if you can't buy those ingredients individually and put them in your pantry,
Yes.
then our body's not going to recognize them. And if you want to listen to someone who's evidence based and really at the forefront of this kind of stuff, just tune in and listen to Professor Felice Jacka from the Food and Mood Centre at Deakin University's Food and Mood Centre in Melbourne.
Okay.
She tells things really, like, breaks down the latest science,
Yep.
but says it in such realistic terms. Like, one of my favourite lines from her is, and she was talking about diet and depression. And this goes back a couple of years ago, so she has really been at the forefront of this. And she said, we just need to be careful of what we put in our gob.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's such an Aussie way of saying,
It is.
just really watch what you're eating, right? And she's now part of the rollout of what they're calling nutritional psychiatry, where they're actually saying our first port of call for anyone that has anxiety and depression should be lifestyle related stuff first before we medicate. So yeah, she's just fantastic. If you can tune in and listen to anything that she's got, it's really worthwhile.
Yeah, amazing. So let's just talk about what we can do right now to change this system, because there is a petition available at the moment.
There is, yeah. We've had the petition out. It's being driven by Mandy Sacker from, she's one of Australia's leading paediatric nutritionists. So rather than someone like myself, I don't have the credentials that a lot of people would be looking for to give this credibility. So Mandy's been driving it and doing lots of media around it. We're currently sitting at about 13,800 people that have signed it.
Just to me, that just flabbergasts me that only 13,000. It's part of why I actually asked you to come on the podcast, because I obviously want people to understand how important it is. If you care about children's health, we need a lot more signatures than that. I was shocked when I went on there how few signatures. I mean, I was on there early days and I've had a look a few times and I'm thinking, why are parents not signing this? Why not even parents, just anyone who is interested or invested in any way, shape and form in the future health of this generation, and even right through to our adults. It's
Yeah,
beyond me.
it is. We would like to try to get to at least 15,000 because we believe that that's at least a turning point where the health ministers and the food ministers are likely to pay attention.
Yes.
And we want to try to really raise awareness of the fact that it is flawed. Everyone knows it's flawed, so why would we try to roll out something in a bigger scale when we know
Yeah.
it's flawed?
I
And
wonder.
that's all we're really asking. We're not saying scrap the system. We're actually
No.
saying, before you roll it out any further, let's actually do the independent review. Let's get rid of the industry involvement in the algorithm,
Mm.
because when they're involved in the algorithm, it's always going to be connected to profit.
Of course,
Mm.
absolutely. I wonder if people are just at that point where they're just thinking, well, there's just no use. I'll just eat real food and look after myself. And that I think there is a bit of mistrust around research in general, to be honest, because
Mm.
we've all seen how conflicted research has become, in that the person who's conducting the research is the one set to benefit from the result
Yeah.
ultimately. I mean, it's almost like I'm very good at digging deep on research, and it's very, very, very rare these days for me to look at a study and actually not find a point of significant conflict.
Oh, really? Wow, that's
It really
interesting.
is. It astounds me where we've got to with research. So
Mm. I
yeah,
think there was something that I heard many years ago, in that it takes, when we see a significant shift in anything in our environment, but particularly around food, we're not going to see the the kind of scientific results that that impact has for anywhere for 20 to 30 years.
of course.
And so now we're clearly at that stage where, ultra processed food has been around for, in our circulation and in our system, for 30 years.
Mm,
And you look at the rate of chronic conditions in our kids compared to when we were at school, and the consumption of those foods is one of the biggest drivers. And
yeah,
the fact that you've got places that give out sports vouchers for these foods, or you go to a fundraiser for a cross country fundraiser at a school and they give every kid a Super Duper, and
yes,
I was at Woolworths on the weekend, and one of the ladies behind the counter was walking around with a bag of lollies, just randomly going around asking kids, "Would you like a lolly?" Not even asking the parent,
yeah,
"Is it okay?"
yeah.
Asking the kids
Parents are
directly.
really up against it, aren't they?
Yeah,
They're really up
yeah.
against it because
So,
I've
I mean, that's just for this audience here. The fact that you're tuning in,
yes,
please be really proud of yourself,
yeah,
because you're here listening because you know that this is your kids' health at stake.
yes. We're
Uh,
investing in something so important,
it
so
is,
important.
and I often say to my parents when I'm doing my parent seminars, at some point we got to be focused on our kids, but we also need to think of the bigger picture and not be afraid to stand up and be that mum. Because let me tell you something, this is where we start to get need to be getting a little bit selfish. Our kids are supposed to be in this generation of kids, not our own kids.
Yep,
This generation of kids are supposed to be in the workforce, being productive,
yep,
paying tax so that we get retirement.
yep,
Like, that's the way the system has worked. But the way it's currently working, by the time we're ready for retirement, these kids are going to be in the hospital system.
yes,
And we're going to be working to pay to keep them in the hospital system.
yes.
So this is, like
Yeah, good
that's
point. Great point.
the reality of the economics of what's actually happening.
Yes.
At the time that we should be getting ready to put our feet up,
Yeah,
our money is going to be required to keep the system going.
going. Yeah.
So,
Oh,
please be proud of the fact that you're here,
yes.
but please be a stand. Like, if you see something happening at your school that you're not happy with, there's now plenty of scientific evidence to support your concerns.
And, Belle is just an incredible resource in the school system. And I get asked regularly about, from parents, like get asked by parents who are really concerned about what they're seeing in their own school systems, what they can do about it. And I always direct them to Belle because she is just
Thank
such
you.
a wealth of knowledge, and she has been fighting this fight when so many of us would have given up. So I think you're absolutely incredible for the work that you do.
Thank you.
And even though I feel like sometimes it's like shoveling stuff uphill, it's like I
Yeah.
can't even begin to imagine the tenacity that it requires to keep going the way that you do. So we're going to put Belle's contact details below. We'll put a link to the petition. Also, we'll have that linked in as many places as possible, but wherever you're listening or watching this from, we'll have a link there. And if you could get onto it as soon as possible. When does the petition close? Do you have an end date for
We
it?
haven't got an end date on it
Cool.
at the moment, so
Just
yeah,
getting numbers. So yeah,
get the numbers
anyone
is
can contribute and also share it with their
yeah,
friends and their community. It's just too important to ignore. So yeah,
yeah.
thanks for
Yeah.
coming on and talking to me today, Belle. I really
Oh,
always
my
love having
pleasure.
chats with you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening.
See ya.
See ya.